We are back with lines 198 to 202. We're going to be reading about Iarbas some more. Rumor has just told him about Aeneas and Dido's passion, and he is quite upset because he, among other North African chiefs, had courted Dido, or at least were suitors to her, and she refused them. So now she's an item with Aeneas, and they're not even married, and this is just unacceptable in the minds of all these chiefs. This can't go on. So Jupiter is going to hear about this, or Hammon, as he's called in North Africa. So let's go ahead. Hic Hamone satus rapta garamantide nympha templa Iovi centum latissimania regnis. Centem aras possuit vigilemque sacraverat ignem. Ex cubias divum aeternas pecudemque cruore. Bingue solum et variis florentia limina certis. This one, meaning Iarbas. So he is our subject. Iarbas. This one, nominative masculine, singular, from hic haec hoc. Satus, having been born or begotten. This comes from sero, seri, check it in the vocabulary, and it's to sow crops and also to, sow seed, as in to be born. And so this one has been born. This is a perfect passive participle. Having been born. Hamone, ahamone, from Hammon. And Hammon is a very powerful god in North Africa, and the Romans usually associated him with Jupiter, since Jupiter was their powerful god. And now we have an ablative absolute here, rapta garamantide nympha, with a Garamantian nymph having been raped. So we know who his mother and father are. Iarbas comes from Jupiter, or Hammon, and this Garamantian nymph who Hammon or Jupiter had raped. So Jupiter's going to listen to him if he is born of Jupiter, if he's begotten of Jupiter. This is his son. Templa Iovi centum latissimania regnis. Centem aras possuit. He possuit. Here's our main verb here. He possuit. He placed. And you can take this with the centem aras, 100 altars, and you can also take it with templa Iovi. He placed centem templa Iovi, 100 temples to Jove. So notice here that Vergil uses Jove. This is the Jupiter, right? And Hammon and Jupiter are the same person. So he placed 100 temples to Jove, right? This one, born of Hammon, with the Garamantian nymph having been raped, placed 100 temples to Jove. And I notice I missed this one. This is Imania. This also goes with Templa. 100 huge temples to Jove. And now where did he do that? We have an ablative that tells us, some ablatives. In his latis regnis. Ablative of place where, so you got to add in an in. That's understood. In his wide kingdoms. And looks like we have some synchesis going on here, interlocking order. Centem and here, and so note that. Also, you might notice some anaphora with centem coming up here. And he placed also 100 altars. We could assume Vergil had in mind there's 100 altars and 100 temples. It's a nice round number, sounds good in a poem like this. So one more time. This one, begotten of Jupiter, from Jupiter, with a Garamantid nymph having been raped, placed 100 huge temples to Jupiter in his wide kingdoms, and placed, you got to put an et, 100 altars. Vigilimque sacraverat ignem, excubias divum aeternas pecudumque cruore, pingue solet variis Florentia limina certis. Your verb, sacraverat, and we have this and here, and he, still Iarbas is our subject, had consecrated, sacraverat, a vigilem ignem, a watchful fire. And Vergil has in mind the fire of Vesta, which is an eternal flame kept burning in the Roman Forum, in the Temple of Vesta. Excubias divum aeternas, and this is in apposition to this fire here, the eternal sentinels or watch persons, divum of the gods, watchmen of the gods, the aeternas excubias, the eternal sentinels, and then divum is really divorum of the gods. This idea that this eternal fire is watching as a sentinel for the gods. It's also a reminder that the gods are there and they keep this fire burning. Pecudemque cruore pingue solet variis Florentia limina certis. And this is cruore, with the blood of pecudum, with flock animals or herd animals, probably sheep, with the blood of sheep. So that cruore is an ablative, and then the pecudum is a genitive of sheep, and it's a third declension genitive from pecus, pecudus. Let's do that part one more time. And he consecrated, go ahead and fit this phrase in here. He consecrated with blood of sheep the watchful fire, the eternal sentinels of the gods, that is. Got this idea of the fire being watchful twice, right? Because we got vigilem and excubias, the eternal sentinels of the gods. And there's a couple other things he consecrated, so you got to keep this verb in mind as you read this last line here. He consecrated, and there's no and, but you got to put it in. So et, and he consecrated pingue solum, the fat earth. What's that all about? Why is the earth fat? The fertile earth, because of all the blood and flesh of the animals that are getting sacrificed. The fat earth, or the blood earth, the fat earth or the fertile earth, and variis Florentia limina, and the thresholds, so this is thresholds of the temples, or you could say temples, but it literally says thresholds, and I think this is some synecdoche part for a whole kind of thing here. So that's the thresholds of the temples, Florentia, flowering, those go together, variis certis, with varied wreaths of flowers, flowering with varied wreaths. One note on that, Florentia is a present active participle. Also, limina is a neuter plural from limen, so this is also neuter plural. It's a present active participle. And when you translate it, I'd put limina first and then afterwards, so you can put the ablative with it. The thresholds of the temples, meaning flowering with varied wreaths. Solum is a neuter, and so pingue is also a neuter form in the third declension. And these are accusatives. All of these are accusatives. So is excubias aeternos, because it's in apposition to ignem vigilem, which is also accusative, because these all are things that he consecrated. And sacra verat is a pluperfect. We translate that as he had sacrificed them. Also, posuit is a perfect, and satus, I said earlier, was a perfect passive participle. So we'll hear what Yarbus has to say in our next video.